Live from London, this is BBC News. Israel Defense Forces say they've started a limited and localized ground operation against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. In a social media post, the IDF say the ground raids are based on precise intelligence against Hezbollah terrorist targets. Also, the US Defense Secretary gives his support to Israel's objectives after speaking with his counterpart, Yoav Gallant. And this is the scene live in Beirut, as a BBC reporter on the ground says that they've had fresh strikes in the south of the capital. Hello and welcome to BBC News with me, Laquesta Burak, and we start with our developing story, and that is the situation in the Middle East and a major escalation on the Israel-Lebanon border. Overnight, the Israel Defense Forces said that they started what they described as a limited, localized and targeted ground operation against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So this is the map that actually shows the border between the two countries. Southern Lebanon is marked by this area in red. So in a post on social media, the IDF said that the targeted ground raids were based on precise intelligence against Hezbollah terrorist targets and infrastructure in southern Lebanon. Now, these targets are located in villages close to the border and pose an immediate threat to Israeli communities in northern Israel. So that was what we heard from the IDF in a statement. Meanwhile, the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has given his support to Israel's objectives after speaking with his counterpart Yoav Gallant. Mr. Austin also warned Iran that it faced grave consequences if it carried out a direct attack against Israel in support of Hezbollah. Well, let's just show you the scene live in Beirut, where you can see that smoke rising above the cityscape and into the sky. Explosions have continued overnight in the capital's southern suburbs. Israel had ordered the evacuation of 3 of those areas. And also attacks on the Beirut International Airport overnight. And reports also of an airstrike hitting a crowded Palestinian refugee camp near the southern Lebanese city of Sudan. We've also had reports from Syria, where state media there has said that 3 people have been killed by Israeli strikes on the capital, Damascus. Israel is yet to comment on those reports. Meanwhile, the UK government has chartered a flight to help British nationals leave Lebanon, scheduled to leave Beirut on Wednesday. In a moment, we'll be hearing from my colleague Anna Foster, who's in Beirut. But first, our Middle East correspondent Lucy Williamson sent us this update from northern Israel.
We've been hearing helicopters overhead for a while now, and also the sound of artillery some distance away. A little while earlier, there were a series of loud explosions that we heard here close to the border as Israel confirmed that it had launched what it's calling limited and targeted ground raids into Lebanon on what it called Hezbollah terrorist targets in the area. It's not clear at this stage what sort of scale or form those raids are taking, but we have witnessed a build-up of troops and tanks here at the border over the last few days. We saw a couple of dozen tanks by the main road here just earlier today. Israel's been inflicting blow after blow on Hezbollah for the past couple of weeks, but any kind of ground invasion represents a new phase in this war, new risks for the Israeli military and new risks for the region as well.
The momentum really gathered here over the few hours leading up to the announcement that Israeli troops had entered Lebanon for the first time since the war in 2006 between these two sides. And it's really the culmination of what has been a very fast-moving Israeli operation over the last week or so. We've seen airstrikes here in southern Lebanon, in the east of the country as well, where Israel said it was targeting Hezbollah's military infrastructure, its weaponry, really trying to degrade the group. And also here in Beirut, as we've seen, very successfully removing and killing many of its senior members, including its leader Hassan Nasrallah. Now, we heard from the IDF that that was going to be a precursor to a ground operation. That has happened really quite quickly, just in a matter of days since it was first suggested by the IDF. I think there are questions now that we will wait and see the answers to. What does a localized and targeted Israeli ground operation in Lebanon look like? What kind of challenges will they face? What does that mean for Lebanese civilians who are still in that area? And I think crucially, what response could it provoke, both from Hezbollah but also from their fellow Iranian-backed proxies here in the Middle East?
And that was Anna Foster, who is in Beirut itself. Here in the studio with me now is Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic. Mohamed, I wonder first off, could we just put into context what all of this means, or what it could mean for the Middle East should there be a significant escalation?
Yeah, Israel is very determined to go into their targets to eliminate both Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Last night was really a significant night. We saw strikes from Israel on Beirut, which is the Lebanese capital, on Damascus, which is the Syrian capital, the continuous attacks on Gaza, and the land incursion in Lebanon. And also a few hours ago, an attack on Yemen as well in Hudaydah. So in a few hours, Israel attacked 4 different Arab countries, if I may say. So Israel is really determined in their targets, as the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in the UN, that he said enough is enough, and he is executing the plan of enough is enough. He's targeting all Israel enemies in all of these countries all at once to show that Israel is capable to achieve their targets by eliminating Hamas and eliminating Hezbollah.
As the story develops, we're hearing a lot about 1982, but also more recently 2006 and the war that took place between Israel and Hezbollah then. What is the feeling of how this particular conflict could develop? What are the expectations on the ground? I don't know what you're hearing from analysts and from colleagues as well.
This is the anticipation that we are waiting at the moment. We didn't see land fighting at the moment, so all the anticipation now to see how Hezbollah, after all of the blues that they got recently, would be able to fight on the ground. So we saw them being eliminated by the pager explosions, by the walkie-talkie explosions, by killing many of their leaders. On top of them, Hassan Nasrallah, their top leader, by using the BLU bomb. And after all of that, what left for Hezbollah is showing how they will fight on the ground. So this is one element that we anticipate to see. The other element that we anticipate to see, to what extent Iran will be involved in this conflict. So this is another element, and this is maybe the main element that would determine if this war would be a wide, all-out war in the Middle East, if Iran was involved, if American troops and interest and facilities in the Middle East would be targeted, and if there will be a direct exchange of attacks maybe between Iran and Israel. Iran said after the killing of Hassan Nasrallah that they will respond, and it will not go unnoticed from their side. This has been said before after the killing of some previous leaders, and now we will see how this war will develop on the ground between Hezbollah and Israel, and to what extent Iran will be involved in that conflict.
Okay, Mohamed, you will stay with us, please. We'll come back and discuss this further, because as you can see there, let me just show that scene live. Just very quickly, as I introduce our next guest, you can see that smoke has thickened. You now cannot see the hillside behind those the buildings there. That is one of the suburbs of southern Beirut. Brendan Kearney is a retired colonel from the United States Marine Corps, and he joins me now. Thank you very much for joining us here on BBC News. In terms of this incursion that has been mounted by Israel and what we're seeing here, the build-up to it, what's your assessment of what is currently taking place?
Well, it's good to be with you, Luqueza. This is not a surprise. I mean, Israel has been signaling for months that there was going to be some type of retribution or revenge, harsh words, against Hezbollah. And they started this a couple of weeks ago, as your previous commentator mentioned, with this absolutely brilliant intelligence effort that leveraged high-tech efforts to basically decapitate Hezbollah's leadership. They've done that. We don't know who obviously is coming up. The younger members of their leadership are going to fill those ranks. But what Hezbollah is now going to suffer is a ground incursion. It'll be a raid. I really do not see the Israelis going into southern Lebanon and staying there for an extended period of time. That has not proved to be very successful for Israel in the past. So they're going to go in. They're going to go in quickly. They're going to strike ferociously. They're going to kill as many members of Hezbollah as they can and destroy as many of these missile launchers, mortar launchers, artillery positions as they can. So this is going to be a bloody situation over the next couple of days.
So in terms of these targets that Israel has spoken about and the infrastructure, are you saying that they are only located in this southern area of Beirut? I mean, what's to say that it's not moved further northwards and then we have mission creep?
Oh, it's hard to say. The Israeli intelligence, just based on what's happened over the last couple of weeks, has spent decades going ahead and looking at what's going on with Hezbollah's positioning of these assets throughout Lebanon and Syria. I think we're going to see these strikes continue into Syria and into Lebanon over the coming days, if not weeks. And I think it's going to be because the Israelis have got superb targeting capabilities, and they're going to exploit that. It's a sad situation because Hezbollah, like Hamas, tends to go ahead and position its weapon systems near civilians, the non-combatants, to try to protect themselves from a Israeli reluctance to go ahead and engage. And I think the Israelis have reached a point now. They've demonstrated here over the last month since October 7th that the gloves are off and they're going to strike hard and repeatedly. So we're in for, I think, some sad times ahead.
Brendan Kearney, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Yolande Nell is in Jerusalem for us. Hello there to you, Yolande. Just remind us on, following the latest developments overnight and, of course, into the morning, what Israel has said on this.
So we just got a brief statement from the Israeli military, really in the middle of the night, saying that it had begun, as anticipated, really, these limited, localised and targeted raids, as it put it, in southern Lebanon, with its ground troops there supported by artillery, supported by the Israeli Air Force, stressing that they were acting in villages just across the border in the very south of Lebanon that they said posed an immediate threat to Israeli citizens. Now, what Israel has been saying consistently is that its operation against Hezbollah is aimed at being able to return home about 60,000 of its citizens who live in communities in the north of the country, and they have been evacuated from their homes over the past year, going back to just after the 7th of October attacks, when Hezbollah began firing barrages of rockets into Israel in support of Hamas, in support of the Palestinians, it said. And there has been pretty much daily cross-border exchanges of fire ever since then. Now, it was clear increasingly in recent days that Israel did not consider that it could complete its operation against Hezbollah without acting against the infrastructure it knows exists in the very south of Lebanon. In the past, it's taken journalists up to show us tunnels that have gone underneath the border, and it has got information about bunkers, about other military targets that it wants to go after on the Lebanese side of the border. But this is really just a very dangerous new stage, potentially, because we know that Hezbollah may have been weakened. Israel's definitely emboldened by the big blows that it's given to its long-time enemy over the past couple of weeks. But in the past, we've always talked about it having tens of thousands of seasoned fighters. And we had that warning from the acting Hezbollah leader yesterday that they're basically battle ready.
OK, Yolanda, thank you very much for that. That was the state of affairs coming to us from Jerusalem. Let's go to Beirut now, and our Middle East correspondent, Ugo Bachega, who is there for us. Hello there to you, Ugo. What are people in Lebanon, specifically in the south of the country, southern Beirut, waking up to?
Yeah, good morning. So it's just after 8 o'clock in the morning here. So people are waking up to the news that this Israeli ground operation has started. I think there was the feeling here over the last few days that this was almost inevitable. So here in southern Beirut, there were explosions overnight hitting Taha, which is Hezbollah's base here in the capital. A location near the city's airport was hit. There were loud explosions that could be heard across the city, and this happened just after the Israeli military warned residents to leave some buildings that it said were being used by Hezbollah, were linked to Hezbollah. And in the south, residents are reporting intense shelling in the village of Al-Tashab, which is right next to the border with Israel. And officials are saying that near the city of Sidon, there was an attack targeting a building in the largest Palestinian refugee camp here in the country, the first time that this location has been hit in this conflict. So an expansion of the Israeli campaign against Hezbollah, and almost obviously for almost a year, people here in Lebanon have been saying that they fear that those attacks by Hezbollah would drag Lebanon into a conflict with Israel that wasn't in the country's interest. And it seems that this is exactly what's happening today.
Okay, we've been talking about what conditions would be like on the ground within Lebanon itself. Many analysts say that the upper hand would then move to Hezbollah. I don't know if you've actually travelled through the south of the country that is being targeted at the moment by Israel. Just give us an idea of how the lay of the land looks like.
Well, yeah, I've been to southern Lebanon and, to some of the villages that have been targeted. And, many of those areas are now deserted because thousands of residents have fled their homes because of the violence. There's a lot of destruction as well. And obviously, over the last 2 weeks, we've seen a huge wave of displaced residents. The authorities are saying that around 1 million people have been forced to flee their homes because of this violence. The Prime Minister saying that this is the largest displacement of residents in Lebanon's history. People fleeing not only the south of the country, but also the Bekaa Valley, which is another Hezbollah stronghold. And these are the places that have been heavily targeted by the Israeli military, and also Taha, which is a heavily populated district of Beirut with an estimated 500,000 residents. So that gives you a sense of the impact that this violence is having on people across the country. And obviously, hospitals are struggling to cope with the sheer number of casualties from these Israeli airstrikes. So the authorities are warning that the situation is likely to get worse if we see an expansion of this Israeli ground offensive and also these Israeli airstrikes across the country.
Ugo Bachega, joining us live there from Beirut. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, let's speak now to Jonathan Conricus, who is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies and also a former spokesperson for the Israel Defence Forces. Mr. Conricus, hello, welcome to the programme. Thank you for joining us. This limited ground operation into Lebanon, what is limited?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I think it's limited in scope, limited in size, limited in the amount of troops that will participate, and effectively limited in how deep into Lebanon it will go. I think we'll be talking about tactical distances. And when I say tactical, I mean the immediate environment that has a direct tactical influence on Israeli communities that Yolande also mentioned before were evacuated from northern Israel and have been evacuated for almost a year. And the aim really is to make it safe enough for Israelis to go back to their homes, but not only to go back, but to stay in their homes without having Hezbollah terrorists within striking distance, endangering them.
Jonathan, what do you think the IDF Israel could achieve? Is it more short-term or long-term with this operation?
I think that this operation is really designed to do something immediate that will have a long-term effect. Immediate in the sense of allowing Israelis to go back home once the security conditions have been met. But long-term, of course, we know that any military operation is, of course, intended to serve a diplomatic or a larger strategic purpose. And what needs to happen here is, of course, fighting on the ground, and then for eventually Israel and Hezbollah to get by under US and perhaps French intervention will agree to some kind of end of hostilities agreement, whereby Hezbollah withdraws from southern Lebanon, distances itself from the southern border so that the area can return to being as quiet and relatively stable as it was until Hezbollah attacked on October the 8th.
Jonathan, you are a former combat commander with the IDF. Is that correct? Have I got that?
That is correct.
Okay. I don't know if you're involved in the 2006 war in Lebanon. I wonder if you could just give us an idea of what you faced then and what the IDF forces can expect today.
Well, what I think everybody in the IDF knows is that we're dealing with a very serious, disciplined, well-equipped, and capable enemy. And I never take anything away from an enemy. I try to assess their capabilities above what they really are. And I think that's a healthy attitude for a soldier to have. And we know in Israel, sadly, that we're talking about an enemy that is capable of fighting. And as such, the preparations, that's what we faced in 2006. I think Israel learned a lot. And I think that what we're seeing now, the last 2 weeks of the war, are a result of what Israel learned from 2006 in terms of preparing intelligence, in terms of analyzing the enemy and conducting surprise attacks.
Jonathan, I'm so sorry. We've just run out of time. Just had to jump in there. But thank you very much for joining us here on the programme around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News.
We empower those who act. Those who see the correlation between things above and things below the surface. Those who navigate risk by meeting every turn with a heightened awareness of what's possible. Constant assessment. Determine the best position. Catch the perfect wave. CME Group, where risk meets opportunity.
OK, we are going to get more now on our breaking news that Israel has begun what it's described as a limited, localised and targeted ground offensive operation against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. These are the shots live into southern Lebanon. And you can see the smoke as a result of some of those strikes. Here in the studio with me now is Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic. Mohamed, I wonder first off, what sort of munitions do we know would be targeting Beirut? We know the drones have been used. We know that there were flares that were used overnight. But what are Israel targeting Beirut proper on the ground, or southern Beirut?
So Israel is targeting Beirut by using drones, by using F-35 fighters, by using F-15 fighters as well. Israel is very determined to target any ammunition that Hezbollah might be storing in this stronghold of them, and also trying to target also the stronghold place, the environment that the fighters are living in, the families. As we can hear from reports that coming from Beirut, these areas of southern Beirut almost became uninhabited because of the warning from Israel and the continuous shelling. And I was following, you know, that the Beirut airport is very close to this area, and they targeted the El Melalke area, which is very close to the airport, in the last hours. And I can see that nearly all the flights from other airliners than the Middle East airliner are cancelled. So the only flights that are working now are the flights of the national airliner, the Middle East. I can see everyone cancelled. Egypt Air cancelled, Qatar Airways cancelled, Pegasus cancelled. So most of the airliners cancelled this.
And we know that the UK government has chartered a plane to get those who want to leave, UK nationals, to help them get out of Lebanon. So it'd be interesting to know where that transfer would be taking place if the airport is targeted more directly. We'll watch that very closely. I just want to talk very quickly about Hezbollah as a foe, Israel's foe. Why are they feared so much? Going back to the 2006 conflict between Israel and Lebanon. What happened?
What happened that the fighting on the ground in these villages, Al-Mutalla, Mayroon, Shtula, Kafrikela, Al-Adesa, Al-Khiyam, all of these villages that Israel is targeting heavily at the moment fought so much against Israel. And Israel could not stay in southern Lebanon for long after losing many Merkava tanks, especially in some areas like Wadi al-Hijr. So they couldn't stay and they had to withdraw. So now this limited and precise incursion that they do at the moment, they try to test the water. They try to understand to what extent the blues that Hezbollah had recently from losing leaders, from the shelling, would affect them in fighting in the ground. And this is what we are expecting to see in the coming hours.
Mohamed, Taha, thank you very much from BBC Arabic. I'm Luquessa Burak here on BBC News. Stay with us.